Welcome, everybody, to our Pixel Opinion review of Black Panther.
Black Panther.
Did you forget the name?
Black Panther.
Here is a review of
Black Panther.
Black Panther.
So how do we feel about it, guys?
Not about animals.
Did you think it was about animals?
I mean, it could have been about giant cats. There were far less giant cats mauling people than I expected.
I see our common issue of not being able to get into the review right away is persisting. Honestly, I had some expectations going into it based on all of the reviews that were quite positive. And honestly, there's some elements that I can say I think was like the best in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then there was also some that were like the worst in my opinion. So it was just this weird balance. Like, let's start with special effects.
Sure.
I think these were the best special effects in the Marvel Universe yet. And when I say that, I don't mean like technical prowess. I mean like their knowledge of like when to use special effects and how, so that it feels really organically placed. Not like
It was seamless, right?
Yes,
Like you could
yes.
feel like, oh, that's really there, even though it obviously wasn't.
and at the same time, not like, some movies where, it's almost like they're pushing, like, say, a 3D aspect or a new CGI element just to say we used it. But, like, the instances where you had the CGI made sense. They weren't excessive. Like, they're well planned out. Still well done, but not like, oh, they're amazing. Just well thought out. Like, they really, really did a good job with that.
I think the best example of that is look at the combat, right? There was a lot of combat in this movie that was one-on-one with like the costume on and everything, doing moves that are not humanly possible. So, I mean, and also, of course, like the suit morphing and stuff like that. It was neat to see the special effects and how well it worked.
Yeah, I thought it worked out pretty well too.
So I agree that this movie was definitely more of a mixed bag for me. It's very different than a lot of other movies in the Marvel Universe. It didn't feel like a superhero movie almost.
For a decent chunk of it, it felt almost more like a spy movie.
Yeah, in a way.
Like,
I mean, you could definitely still see the hero's journey, which is pretty standard in all these movies, right?
You had sort of the very typical, like, oh, we're doing all this covert stuff. There's these weapon smugglers, like, stuff like that. Like, the first half of the movie felt more like that, whereas the second half of the movie felt a bit closer to a superhero movie.
And this is where I get into some of the worst of it. In my opinion, there was too many of the tropes. A lot of the, like, I'm not going to detail, but characters or factions, their motivations, their, oh, we're a spy, or we're changing sides, oh, we're going to join the fight. Like, a lot of the changes in the motivations, the surprises, were very, very predictable.
Yeah.
And to me, that really took away from it because, at this point, they've just oversaturated with the superhero movies. And this was the first time that I watched one of them where I was just like, I'm not surprised by much of what's happening here.
Yeah.
I'd have to agree. Like, right from the start, everything felt so predictable. And within the first, 10 minutes or so of the movie, they'd introduce the good guys, they'd introduce the bad guys, and you already knew exactly what was going to happen. And then it happened. Like, there was no surprises at all.
I think it's funny because, I mean, the moment after the movie ended, I just looked at Amanda and I was like, that was the Lion King. Like, it just felt so much like the Lion King. It was the family power struggle over the throne, and it was kind of like their world would have been in ruin were it not for coming to the rescue again, And it was a personal struggle with the main character on kind of like his family having some wrongdoings in the past and things like that.
Well, they really made their own problems.
Yeah.
And then had to solve their own problems. And that was basically it.
See, and one of the other things going into the problems is that, and I've said this in countless reviews, the superhero is going to come out in the end, but it's that, how's he going to overcome it? This is such a big catastrophe. To me, the threat didn't seem that big.
Yeah.
Right? Like, again, for, risk of spoilers, I don't want to talk about what the, like, villain's goal was. But the whole time I'm like, could be worse. Right? Like, and the thing is, I really, really liked Kilgore. As bad of a name. one of the things that stuck out in my mind was how bad the name was.
Yeah.
But the actor, I really liked him. But then I'm watching the movie and I'm like, okay, like, he's good. He knows what he's doing. But, like, is his ultimate goal that bad? Not really.
Exactly. It didn't feel that, and that, I mean, that goes hand in hand with, like, not feeling like a regular superhero movie. Is just that it wasn't one of those end of the world moments, right? So many of these movies have those, like, if we don't save the day, the world ends, or millions of people die.
Well, I mean, it's not even just the world is going to end, but, like, the protagonist is at risk.
Yes.
In this whole movie, when, like, he was in conflict, I got the feeling like he could just walk away.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he's got a cause to fight for his country, his people, or whatever. But, like, they didn't seem to be in imminent danger if they just went along with the villain. And is like, if he just was like, all right, I'm going to go live in New York with the Avengers, he would have been fine. Like, where was the risk?
I think the problem there was that the villains never actually did anything. They threatened to do things. They seemed to have some goals that might have been bad, but they never actually ended up doing anything.
Yeah.
They started to do something, but they didn't actually do it.
But that's what I mean about, like, the mixed bag. Like, the CGI was great. Some of the actors were fantastic. I think, to me, Kilgore, or why did I call him Kilgore? Killmonger was, like, the highlight. But then, like, the motivations, the actual threat just fell on their face. I'm like, all right, cool, And, obviously you have to have some reason for these action scenes. And some of them were fantastic. Like, like that car chase that you see in the trailers was really well done. But, like, you just get the feeling, like, that none of this was necessary. Like, none of it.
Well, and I mean, even more unnecessary, it felt like the first half of the movie was just there to poorly set up the second half, but it really had no purpose.
Oh, if we were doing a spoiler discussion, I have a few things to say about the first half of the movie.
Like, it really felt like the first half of the movie was filler, and not in a good way.
Another interesting point, I guess we can go on, is the lack of comedy. This is one of the more serious movies in the Marvel Universe.
They tried a couple times.
There was some really light comedy.
And it wasn't like it was bad.
Yeah,
It was very... Yeah, it was
fine. It worked.
But the instances of comedy were done well. I laughed.
Yeah.
But they were few and far between.
They really tried to keep it serious.
I think the best character for that was probably his sister.
Yeah.
But they didn't give her very much screen time, which I think was a shame because I think she was one of the more interesting characters. But they didn't give her much time.
Like, she's like, the tech expert, and she gives him all his gadgets. And, like, you think of, like, a James Bond movie, right? Like, that's a much larger element of it.
Yeah.
It really felt like it needed more time on air in this one.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was cool. Some of the, like, the remote vehicle was
really neat.
Really cool. But it really wasn't developed enough.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, because it's not a short movie. It was, like over 2 hours. Like, 2 hours and 15 minutes or so. And there was a lot of parts that were underdeveloped to make way for this first half that just didn't need to take place.
I honestly didn't even realize it was that long. I didn't really feel it dragged, which is surprising.
No, it didn't drag.
Yeah. It was interesting pointlessness, I would say. It didn't drag, but no part of, especially the first half, no part of it is, like, memorable. Like, nothing in this movie.
I do find it interesting that it made, like, intrigue enough to keep me interested, but yet it was that long. I'm very surprised that you said over 2 hours, but
2 hours and 15 minutes.
Wow,
like I said.
Really surprising.
So a quick question here. There's a lot of reviews that are coming back right now, 9 out of 10. Where do you guys think that's coming from?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think the movie's bad.
No.
I
didn't ask if it was bad. Just
I'm not sure. Maybe it was a completely different set of expectations.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like I said to you guys before the movie, and this was before I saw the reviews, usually the Marvel movies that I have no expectations for are some of the better ones. Like Guardians of the Galaxy was fantastic, but it was because going into it, I didn't really know that realm of the Marvel universe, and I didn't have expectations, so it could only go up from there.
Yeah.
With Black Panther, I made the mistake of seeing all these reviews and thinking, oh, okay, now that mentality of it's going to be a great movie is going to come into play, and maybe I built it up a little bit for myself. And again, I did think it was a good movie overall, but I definitely wouldn't put it in the upper echelon of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Like, I kind of had high expectations too. I mean, I don't look at reviews too much, but
Or at all.
But I did have higher expectations.
I don't even think you look at our reviews. You're not even present right now.
He ain't here.
What do you mean, our reviews?
Yeah.
I thought we were just talking about a movie here.
We are. That's what. You know what?
Okay.
Keep going.
But the thing is, like, I had higher expectations just because Marvel's been slowly upping their game.
Well, yeah. I mean, when was the last bad one they did?
Probably the second Thor movie,
Which is
a while ago.
Or the third Iron Man movie.
Well,
I
that
don't
was
know-
a long.
I don't know
too.
which one.
Both of those are pretty
Yeah.
bad.
But that's still, like, if you think about it, that's
was a while.
that's a long time ago. And since then, they have been knocking it out of the park. And even though it's in such a large quantity, to the point of potential oversaturation, great movie after great movie, it's almost difficult, almost impossible to now look at these in a vacuum.
Yes.
You know, if I could go into this movie in a vacuum, maybe I wouldn't be so caught up in the predictability of it, because it's what we see in like every superhero movie. But it's almost impossible at this point, especially now where they're doing all the crossovers. So you're watching the individual movies because they're going to lead into crossovers or from them. And it's almost impossible to just take it in and of itself. Now, this movie, I think it could be viewed by itself, right?
It's another one of those origin movies that, and it really does feel like a standalone, like even much more than Homecoming was, because Homecoming had a pretty big Iron Man element in it.
Think
as
about
well.
it. There was almost no crossover. Like, I mean, okay,
Yeah.
one of the main villains, Claw, right? He appeared in, one of the other Marvel movies briefly. And the same thing with the CIA operative, right? He appeared in one of the other movies briefly. But it was so in a vacuum, this movie, compared to the other ones. There was no connection with the outside world.
But we know it's connected. That's the
Yes,
thing.
yes,
You
we
can't
know it's
escape that,
connected.
right? Like, you watch Spider-Man Homecoming, and, like, his origin was practically in Civil War.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, like, you almost have, like, it's the middle section now. Whereas this one really was the origins, well...
I mean,
not
he was
as
already
much-
introduced.
He was
We
already
knew
introduced, and that's the thing. Even
Yeah.
though he was introduced much like Spider-Man, I didn't feel like this was the middle chapter like
Yeah.
Homecoming. This really did feel like it could have belonged on its own. And to me, I think that did it a bit of a disservice simply because of the expectations. Like, if you know that it's going to be viewed that way, play into it. Because otherwise, you kind of build that almost like half, the mixed bag of
Yeah,
expectations.
mixed bag.
So, any other key points you guys want to touch on?
I can't really think of anything.
I mean, I can bring up the music briefly. I thought it worked well with the theme. But, I mean, that's about it. It was good. I enjoyed it. It worked well. I can't say much more than that because I don't want to ruin any other spoilers.
Yeah,
But,
I don't have much to say about the music. I thought it was there.
yeah, it fitted with...
I didn't feel like it was one of the standout music. Like,
You can't compare something to, like, Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Or even Thor Ragnarok had an amazing soundtrack. But those movies, I think you're just going to put that soundtrack on those upper echelons. Like, they were so good. If you compare it to, let's say, like, Iron Man 2, Thor, like the older Thor
Even
movies.
still, though,
it's
like,
fine.
the music that they used, especially when it was, like, ramping up for, like, combat scenes, it was appropriately thematic. It got, it did help get, like, the adrenaline going for those fight scenes, and it really did add to it.
Yep.
But, it wasn't as memorable.
Yeah.
Like, I remember in the theater that it got me ramped up, but I don't really remember the songs that much.
No.
Like,
I mean,
Thor
a lot of it was ambient.
Thor Ragnarok, like, I can still in my head imagine some of the, like, songs as the scenes are happening.
Yeah.
Where this one's like, they were very enjoyable at the time, but they didn't stick with me.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be one of our shorter reviews,
Yeah.
so let's get down to some scores.
All right.
Joshy,
Sure,
lead it
I'll
off.
start 7 out of 10. I thought it was good. I enjoyed the movie, but again, we talked about it not quite being in those upper echelon of the Marvel movies. There's definitely other movies that were better, but there's a lot of movies that were worse too.
Oh yeah. I didn't say that there wasn't.
I would say 7 out of 10 too. It felt very adequate throughout. It didn't really feel like it had any huge flaws. Just as a movie goes, it didn't really feel like it brought anything to the Marvel universe either. I did like some of the action sequences, so that's sort of what gave it a 7 rather than a 6 for me.
All right. Well, go ahead, Josh.
I'll do it after.
No. Do it now.
I was only gonna say, I am very surprised that they really didn't touch anything on the Infinity storyline.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing we got was at the end of the credits. It was like Black Panther.
He'll be back in Infinity Wars.
back in Infinity Wars, but it's like something, right? Like,
yeah, I was expecting. Anyways,
because they've been doing that at the end of the movies recently, like Thor Ragnarok and Spider-Man Homecoming. But there's been some, even like, okay, not so much with the Infinity Stones and Spider-Man, but the Iron Man connection.
Yes.
And then in Thor, obviously, we have the connections. And this one, it was just like, all right, cool. At the end of the credits, we're going to say he'll be in Infinity War. It's like, yeah, okay. But
We kind of all expected that. Like, everyone's going to be in it. Apparently, Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think the closest thing would be the end credit scene, which...
yes. The thing I find strange is that we're still missing an Infinity Stone.
Yeah, but that could show up...
It'll show up in Infinity Wars,
yeah.
I know, but
That's a discussion for another time, Josh.
and I've expressed my disdain with the credit scenes at this point, because really, when the movie's over, I just want it to be over. And I mean, this one had 2, which I guess is not bad.
Nope.
And you get one post-credit scene of like a minute that is an actual tie-in, and it is a tie-in for Infinity War, but I mean, to me, that feels a little lazy. Right? I get it. There's been some of those in previous movies,
Yeah.
but at least in the previous movies, there was a stone or another character or a much more substantial.
I think
cross.
one thing we can definitely say about this is that this movie had nothing to do. Like, it did nothing for the universe. It added nothing. It really. If this
it's
movie
what happened
didn't
between
exist,
the end of Civil War and Infinity War. It's like
it happened.
it happened.
If this movie didn't exist, it wouldn't change anything.
Nobody
No
outside of
storyline.
Wakanda would know what happened.
No.
And the thing is, like, even Guardians of the Galaxy brought more because it brought the Infinity Stone, and that was one of the goofiest movies, right?
Yeah, but it was still really well done.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to go with the trifecta here and give it a 7 out of 10. Right from the start, I thought it was a good movie.
Yep.
If you're a fan of the Marvel Universe, as much as it's not necessary, for like bridging the gap, like you just said, it's still worth watching.
Absolutely.
At no point, like, anytime a 2 hour and 15-minute movie can feel like it's gone, fairly quickly and smoothly, to me, that's a win. Good combat, good special effects, a decent amount of predictability. You're not going to regret seeing the movie. But if you're only like a semi-casual Marvel Universe fan, you could skip it and just wait for like Netflix or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's at no point would I tell somebody don't watch this movie.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I wouldn't tell anybody you have to go out and watch it right now.
Yeah, you're not a Marvel fan. You still got to see this movie. No, you're not going to say that.
Yeah. So that's where I stand. 7 out of 10 across the board. Still a good movie, just not an amazing movie. Let's hope that. That's not a sign of things to come.
I don't think so.
Because with how good the Marvel movies have been, let's hope that this is just a little bit of a
Blip.
I think inevitably, you make enough movies, there's got to be a worst, right? And this is not the worst, but there has to be.
It's by no means the worst.
Yes.
There is definitely, I mean, you have to go further back, but there's definitely worse. But this is still a good movie, just not a great one.
Yep. All right. Well, I mean, that's our review of Black Panther. Let us know what you think. Tell us why everyone is giving it 9s and 10s out of 10s.
Yeah, because I'm sure there's going to be some people that are mad at us for not giving it a 10 out of 10. Tell us why.
We want to know. All right. Well, anyways, thanks for watching. Live in the real world, play in a Pixel one.
Hey, did you like that video? If you did, be sure to let us know by clicking the like button and leaving a comment. If you want to be first in line for any new content, be sure to subscribe to our channel and then hit up our Facebook page. The link's in the description below to see what's coming up next.